Hey, welcome to HR Famous, brought to you by Kinetics, the leading RPO recruiting firm for growth companies. Named by HRO Today as the top midsize RPO provider, Kinetics uses its unique skill-based recruiter model to deliver on RPO engagements, allowing them to customize scope to meet your unique hiring needs. If you have recruiting challenges and want to consider RPO as a solution, give Kinetics a call. Find them online at kineticshr.com. HR Famous is also brought to you by HRU Tech, a contingent staffing firm specializing in engineering, IT, and technically related placements across multiple industries. If you're looking for technical talent or searching for a career, look no further than HRU Tech. Find them online at hrutech.com and call them today.
All right, it's the podcast, the one and only HR Famous. I'm Chris Dunn, but it's not about me, folks. It's about you, and it's about this esteemed panel I have joining me today. The one, the only, well, actually, there's a lot of Jessica Lees. The only one that matters is the one from Marriott. And my co-host here at HR Famous, Jessica, how are you?
You know what? There are a lot of Jessica Lees, but I take pride in having like jessica.lee as my email address. I'm not going to say the whole thing, but what the hell, people can email me. Is there jessica.lee2s, jessica.lee3s? I'm the first, the only one.
On the social, is it the Lee with 6 E's or is it Jessica with 6 S's? What is it?
Here we go.
Yeah. Well, so I'm a little late to the gram and those other things. So yes, thank you for outing me.
It's Jessica Lee, 41, 74, 76. But like really, she can handle that like when she renames like the other like features. And of course, the voice weighing in on Jessica Lee's social like presence is Tim Sackett from the greater Detroit, Michigan area. Tim, how are you?
Hey now, I'm doing good. Feeling good. You know, nice weather. Golfed really well last night.
I was gonna say I almost texted you at 4:30 and said, "How's the golf?" But then I thought the better of it. All right, so let's get started. Like enough about Tim's like ground game in golf or his short game or long game, however he says that. We got a couple topics. We're going to talk first about Salesforce, some news, because we have to cover COVID-related workplace news. It's what we do here at HR Famous. Then we're going to talk about kind of long form, or at least intermediate form, how HR generalists are basically like starting to rule the world. That's my take. I'm going to get Jessica and Tim's take on it. But first, Jessica and Tim, I would tell you Salesforce is out with workplace-related news in this COVID world we find ourselves in. They announced last week that they're giving all employees the option to work from home till, here's what I want you to do. I'm going to read these. And because Jessica Lee is Jessica Lee, we're going to let her react first, Tim, and then you just come in hot. I'm going to read each one of these things that they announced. I want you to say, whatever, no big deal, interesting, not enough. Just like, let's just rank it like that. Jessica Lee, are you ready to go?
Ready. All
right, here we go. They announced that Salesforce announced that they're giving all employees the option to work from home until at least July 31st of 2021, extending the previous deadline, allowing remote work until the end of 2020. Jessica, what say you?
To be expected. Good job.
Yeah. Timmy?
I think it's subject to change if their financials don't come back well in the first quarter of 2021.
So you're saying that Z must report to Salesforce Tower in San Francisco. Is that what you're saying? That they may come back?
I'm just saying, like, you know, we tend to throw this stuff out there, and then the rubber hits the road when the financials don't look great. We want to circle the wagons. Like,
you're such a business owner. All right, let's keep going. Salesforce is slowly reopening its 160 offices around the world based on local government guidelines and the advice of medical experts and local leaders. But this option, meaning telling them when it's coming, is meant to allow employees to plan ahead. Jessica, what say you?
So I think this is good. It's an option. Like some people want to be in the office. So like let those people come back within reason. Yeah. You know, Tim Sackett would be back in the office if he were there.
He's back in like March 30th.
I never left.
Banging on the door. Hey.
Okay, Tim, big deal, no big deal. I'm assuming I know what you're going to say here.
No big deal.
Subject to change is what Tim Sackett says. Understood. All right, so here we go. It's also expanding benefits for its employees, offering $250 more to purchase office supplies to work from home, in addition to the $250 that they already gave them earlier this year. Jessica Lee, what say you?
I'm a little on the fence about this. First of all, like, that's a lot of Post-its. Who needs $250 worth of supplies? So I have a question about that. But my second comment is, you know, let's say this is a technology company and it's not for paper clips and Post-its. Right. What does $250 get you from like a technology perspective? I don't know. So I don't know. I have lots of questions about this.
It gets you a Chromebook that you don't want, Jessica Lee, is what it does. Tim,
like
what's
every elementary kid in America has right now?
Tim, that's where I was coming down, is I thought $250 doesn't sound like Salesforce to me. Tim?
Well, I'm assuming that they already have their laptop and all that stuff. But when you start, like, again, needing some extra coaxial cable or an extender or crap like that, maybe. And by the way, it's total of $500 because they already gave $250. This is an additional $250. I don't think it's about pens and paper and crap like that. I think it's more about, you know, setting up your work. Yeah, I think it's about setting up that workspace to work. Like JLee, you're sitting in, you know, your son's room right now. You had to have something like a comfortable chair or whatever. Like, you know, that $500 could, you know, do you well.
You know what it's about, Jessica and Tim, is it's about getting a sweet set of DJ headphones.
Are those Beats brands?
Right
Jessica, you're asking me what my headphones are.
Are those Beats brands?
They're not. The red cord. It's funny you say that. I got them out of the box. I'm like, what's with the red cord? Now I know. Jessica can see me on camera. Don't share this with Bobby, who's an accomplished DJ. This is just like I try and find that sweet spot on Amazon. Good ratings and cheap. That's all this is. All right, let's keep going. This is the last one I want to share with you. I thought $250, by the way. Come on. Last one I want to share with you. There's not a lot of detail on this. They also announced that they're giving parents 6 additional weeks of paid time off. Jessica Lee, come on in. By the way, there's no detail on this. I did a bunch of Google searches. It's been reported widely, but there's no detail.
So, you know, I think recently we were talking about the quote unquote benefits people are giving to parents, like as they're trying to figure out how to work from home and navigate virtual schooling and all of that. And I think I said something about the fact that some of these things just don't seem like benefits. So I give them an A for effort in like offering something, because the alternative is, you know, they're trying. But I will tell you, like, if that were me, like, I don't need 6 weeks of time off. I'm not even using the time off you already give me. I need some other benefit. I need a subsidy or something to hire help to come into my home and help manage virtual schooling so that I can keep working, because I want to work. I don't want to take the time off.
That's what the 250 is for. That's what
to be a live-in.
Jessica, that's what the $250 is for.
Well,
for you too.
Oh my gosh. Do you know how much childcare costs in the DC metro? No.
All right, Tim, 6 weeks off. What say you?
Katie, why does Salesforce hate their childless kids so much? Why do they hate their childless kids or employees so much?
Because
what do I get, Katie? I'm an empty nester. I got no kids at home. What do I get?
You know, here's what I think is, and I think what they're trying to become. And by the way, there's no detail on this, so obviously they've got to navigate that piece of it. But clearly, there's a divide here. I would tell you, and I want both of you to respond to this, you know, if truly they're giving a higher benefit level to parents, they're really at that. And I see this a lot, like with Salesforce employees. Salesforce employees aren't necessarily the young kid right out of college. They're the 30-something person that maybe's already moved just outside of the perimeter in that trendy area that they're really hoping makes it. From a bohemian perspective, they're trying to become the employer of choice in tech for parents. Jessica, what do you think about that hot take?
Well, I would like some data to back up that hot take. But I think it's an interesting take. I mean, so the thing is, like, people say this all the time around, like, why are there all these benefits for egg freezing, for this, for that, that cater to a certain population within like an employee base? And like, you're always going to have certain benefits that certain populations get to take more advantage of than others. And so be it. So be it. That's all I have to say. Just have a well-rounded package of a bunch of different stuff.
Tim, you like my hot take that they're trying to get the people with kids?
Yeah, I mean, does really any employer want to be the employer of choice for parents? It just costs more money and they're less productive. I mean, that's what all the studies say.
By the way, but do you really believe mothers are less productive? I will tell you, I am like the most productive and effective, and like the best has yet to come, people.
I'm certainly not challenging that.
No,
I'm not like
that's. Hey, I've always.
This is a losing battle. This is a losing battle.
Right. I'm not even exploring that.
Do these jeans look bad on me?
I've always espoused that you should just hire single moms. Like, they're the most productive people in the world. Like, that should be the entire hiring strategy.
Hey, I will say this whole thing about like 6 weeks off really tells you how much money Salesforce is making. And I say that as somebody at a small company that just got an invoice, like a quarterly invoice from Salesforce, okay? And within 5 days of receiving the invoice, had an email from their accounts receivable, I guess it is, that said urgent in all caps. So they're making money. And by the way, we might have asked for relief from some licenses in Salesforce as we kind of deal with a few furloughs here and there. We did not get a lot of help from Salesforce.
Ooh, bad move on their part.
So, it's interesting. I mean, a lot of money there. Jessica, anything to close us out on the Salesforce thing?
Well, I'm not going to harp on it, but I really do think bad move on Salesforce's part. Like, this is a long-term play, and I think they got to think about relationships. And I know they're trying to recoup their money, get their invoices out, and collect. But that makes me, I'm disappointed.
I love the fact that you're defending me. Now I'm going to flip it around and say, with their people strategy, any closing thoughts on the people strategy? 6 weeks off?
A for effort on a 6 week off. I give an A for effort.
Tim, business owner, come in here. 6 weeks off. Compete with that, Tim.
I can't, but I do think I go back to what Jessica said, like to try to communicate out to your employee base how certain benefits are going to be used by certain segments of your population and not is one of the hardest things to communicate, because you're always going to have people that are like, oh my gosh, yes, this is great. You're taking care of us as parents. And you're going to have those single employees with no kids going, what? Like, what the heck? Why do they get 6 paid weeks off? What about me? What about me?
Yeah.
It isn't fair.
All right. We'll keep our eye on Salesforce. Always leading with a lot of this stuff. Clearly have the budget to do it. Although, to Jessica's point, what's the $250 get you? My answer, a Chromebook. Okay, here we go. All right, so next topic. I want to talk to both of you because you're among the people I respect most in the world of HR. I had Kathy Rapp on my individual podcast called Best Hire Ever. And Kathy is a long-term partner at a search firm in the HR world called HRQ. Always respected the brand, like the brand, love Kathy. She writes for us at Fistful of Talent. And we had a long talk about the world of just what was going on in HR search and HR jobs. And one of the things she said was the big winner out of this whole COVID period that we're living in right now is really the HR generalist. And Tim, I'll go to you first on this one. What Kathy told me and what we kind of talked about in depth, and I wanted to kind of dig in with the two of you, is that when HR staffs shrink and HR budgets shrink, that CHROs are grabbing for, first of all, generalists. But Tim, I would also say that they're grabbing for multi-tool players that can do a lot of different things, which makes total sense. Have you seen that in the marketplace, Tim?
Yeah, and even like new kids coming in, like the hard part is the thing that's going to get somebody to be attracted to you is probably your deep knowledge in one area, right? That's going to be like, oh, hey, this person has like a really deep knowledge here, but you better, like you said, have a multi-tool. Like in baseball, Katie, they call it a 5-tool player, right? They can hit for power, they have speed, they can throw really hard, blah, blah, blah. And I think in HR, we have to figure out how many tools do you have to have. When we say generalist, we tend to think, oh, they know everything, but they're not really good at anything. I don't think we're talking about that generalist. I think we're talking about a generalist that can do recruiting, can do employee relations really well, and maybe is great at training, right? Like they're a multi-tool player that brings something to the table. I think for people coming into the profession, it's really hard to prove that. But I totally agree that we're looking for people that have a really deep knowledge in more than one area.
Yeah, Jessica, I think it's probably true that like for people coming into the world, you probably got to pick a lane and then try and expand to that, maybe get promoted into an HR business partner role, something like that. What do you see about kind of what Kathy shared with me from her vantage point at HRQ?
The Use Case podcast is where technology vendors get to talk about themselves. And it's a wonderful place for vendors, investors, and practitioners to listen to the story of the solution, the features, the benefits, the attributes, etc. And we get to know the CEO or founder during the call, and we also get to know the tech. So subscribe to the Use Case podcast.
Yeah. Well, by the way, Kathy Rapp, president at HRQ, a partner. Yes, she is.
She's a player.
She is a player. Much respect to that woman. I like her. But no, I think you're right. Like right now, especially in HR, like you're dealing with so many new and unknown things, whether it's COVID, work from home, how to, help the workforce through this challenging time. A lot of companies are having to deal with downsizing or furloughs or, things that, typically are also handled in the generalist space. So I think that that's right. Like now is the time for generalists where there's a bunch of these unknown things or things that classically sit with generalists or HR business partners. I can use my own experience to say, people don't typically think about me as a generalist or a classic HR person by trade. I'm always the technology, the brand, the, innovation and strategy person, but I have my roots in the trenches as a generalist, doing everything and anything, from managing leave to like policy work. And so all that has like helped me for this, current time that I'm in. And I don't think I would be able to be effective right now if it weren't for my generalist chops. But I think like the thing that's interesting in this dialogue is like, I've also observed, like we're saying now's the time of generalists, but I also think that like, that's not the lane that people are attracted to in HR. Like when they're growing in their careers, like they want to be a specialist. They want to be at the forefront of this and that. And I've always observed like the talent pipelines for generalists and business partner roles aren't as strong as they could be. And so it's just interesting. Like I think we have maybe a little bit of an attraction or positioning challenge for the generalist. And that's something we're going to need to solve for in the long term within the HR space.
Yeah, by the way, when you were listing all the things that people kind of consider you brand technology, don't forget brains, right? Brains is usually like right there. Big brain.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Big brain. What do you got, Tim?
No, I agree. I think Jessica, like you pointed out, like, because I'm sitting there thinking, and like I think it's the hardest thing. If you want like that new person coming in, or even somebody that's mid-career to be in that like HR BP role where they have all this generalist capability, but it's so hard to get them promoted because they're not viewed as a specialist and having a really, really great at one thing. Like I can take a look at my own career and understand that the people that I knew were really great at something like comp and benefits or something like that were really great at that, were more likely to get promoted than a really great HR BP. And so I think we undervalue that generalist knowledge. And so then it goes back to going, we want them to have that. And then in bad times, when we need somebody to do a lot of things, we value that. But in a really hot work world, a low unemployment world, we tend to devalue the generalist work overall because we don't view them as being super good at any one thing. Katie?
So let's do this. Just taking this like a step further, I want to give you guys some areas, some specialties in the world of HR and talent. And I want, let's like just go like rapid fire here. And let's get into some specifics about what you see, the adjustments some of these specialties might have to make in a COVID recessionary like world to make sure that they're still valued. Because, you know, I think the point that Kathy was making is that if staff size shrinks, HR leaders are going to look for, back to Tim's point, the 5-tool like player, you know, other people call it an athlete, right? People that can do different things. So let me give you a couple of these. Some of them aren't easy, by the way. So if you're a comp and benefits person, how do you protect yourself in this COVID world and show that you're a broader player than you really are? Anything?
I think it's traditional comp and benefits, I think, was all about managing of vendors or managing certain things, certain systems, and keeping like, you know, kind of like, you know, things on track. I think a modern comp and benefits person is really data driven. And I think if they go deeper into the data and continue to elevate that data to their executive team in a really good way that helps these executives make better decisions, understand what's going on, I think that's how they protect themselves. I think if you're traditional comp and benefits and you think your job is to manage brokers and crap like that, you're easily replaced. If you go deep into the data, you're going to protect yourself.
Let's do this just in the interest of time so we can keep this fairly short. Let's go through each one of these. I'm going to have one of you react to each one of these, and let's come back and talk broadly. So I keep that thought, Tim, because I think there's like a certain like skill that they need to have to be able to do that. Jessica, how about employee relations professionals? People that are doing mostly employee relations, anything come to mind in terms of what they've got to watch out for, how they need to broaden to make sure that they can like be valued in, you know, fewer FTEs kind of across the United States and globally?
Yeah, I mean, I think employee relations is actually an area where there's like a ton of potential for these people to broaden out and be seen, like as a generalist or HR business partner. But I think the most important thing with that is, you know, I think I've observed a lot of employee relations people can be like in a very reactive mode. Problem comes up, let me help this, you know, leader or manager solve it, or associate issue comes up, let me help this associate through it. And I think like if they can move and pivot towards like a much more proactive stance around, you know, managing the workforce, managing the issues, managing the relationships with their leaders in particular, then that, you know, starts to position them in a place where I think they could potentially be seen as a generalist, but it's hard to get out of that firefighting mode is the only problem.
Yeah, I like it. Tim, next one up is recruiters. You know, especially like with a lot of companies not having headcount, if they've made the decision to retain the recruiter, what's a recruiter, and we'll go corporately, not agency, what's a corporate recruiter got to do to make sure that he or she can remain employed through the remainder of 2020, even when hiring's light?
Yeah, understand where the money's being made in the organization, and then talking to those leaders to understand where they need the upgrades and making sure those upgrades happen. I think you have to go right to the top. And so if you know you're an organization that's run by sales, or you know you're an organization that's run by innovation and technology, or whatever that might be, getting in front of those leaders to understand where they're weakest and how do you upgrade, you know, while you have a lot of talent on the market right now, and really pushing that, because no one's going to come and ask you to do that. You have to get out there and actually do that yourself. Right.
Interesting. Last one I've got, I'm going to combine these two. Jessica, for you is OD and talent management, performance, succession, things like that, at least somewhat related to core OD. Any thoughts about that related to what those folks got to do to really like show their value in this recessionary period?
Well, like I think within that space, like where there's so much potential for this function is to like really be seen as like forefront of HR and talent, where like in a lot of ways you're serving as, let's call it a broker or an account manager to pull in all of the specialists. Like figure out what the issue is, come up with solutions and architect things based on all the things in the toolkit, pulling in, comp, pulling in, learning, pulling in all these other functions. And if someone can get themselves to a place where, they're playing that role, then I think there's a ton of value to be played or to be had if they can get there.
I think like when I listen to both of you kind of go rapid fire through that like set of specialties in HR and how they can like show value, one of the things that I think, and Jessica, you could probably talk to this a little bit as well as you, Tim, but I think the people that are really thriving in any area right now, whether they're an HR generalist or they're in a specialty, well, I'll say it this way. One skill that is valuable for any HR leader with somebody on his team is the ability to communicate. Big groups, small groups, kind of help become like your own PR department in the world of HR, because I think since, mid-March, there's been so much messaging on a variety of fronts that we've had to do in the world of HR that any person, whether they're a generalist or in one of these areas, if they've got a skill to communicate and they pick up some project work doing that, like to the rest of the workforce about what's going on with all of this humanity and all of this craziness and chaos that we've seen, that's a super valuable skill. Any thoughts about that? That's probably the primary skill I see right now within all this chaos.
Yeah, I think that being proactive. I think, Katie, think about also who's most at risk when you think of like, especially like larger HR teams. Most likely the CHRO is going to be fine. Like they're going to maintain. They're a strategic executive. They have to be there.
By the way, for the most part, a generalist as well, Tim. Right?
For sure.
Don't forget that.
And I think the ones that are at risk a lot of times are those direct reports to that CHRO. A lot of times they're going to have to like let somebody go. And I think if I'm one of those, if I'm a VP or a director or someone that reports into the CHRO, I'm immediately becoming the chief of performance in the organization, right? I want to drive higher level productivity and performance, and I'm going to figure out how to do that. And I'm going to show my CHRO and the rest of the C-suite that I'm doing that, because ultimately in harder economic times, you better be the one driving performance and helping that. Now, in an OD talent management side, that could be data, that could be developing leadership training, that could be going out and talking to Chris Dunn about boss, whatever, but you have to make sure that happens.
Yeah. Jessica,
like building off of this idea of being a good communicator, though, I think like the most important piece that underlies that, because like you can't just have someone who is like all talk and good at talking, but it's like this diagnostic ability, because I feel like there's so many people who can just react. Someone says, here's this thing and here's the thing I want to solve for. And then they just do what they're being told, as opposed to really diagnosing what it is, what is the problem, what are we solving for, what is the right solution. And like, I just don't know if people spend enough time really honing that diagnostic ability and then being able to communicate really appropriately around, this is what is actually the thing that is happening here. And this is the thing that we're going to do to solve for it. So diagnostic capabilities plus communication is
which, by the way,
is there a part of that where you have to be able to create and do all at the same time, right? Because I think in HR sometimes we just want to create and we want to take this long cycle to create this big giant program. And I think in like more difficult times, it's almost like I'm creating and doing all at the same time, because I don't have time just to create and not do.
Yeah. It's shorter cycles for sure. Tim, I think the other thing I wanted to come back to before we like wrap this up is the data piece. So when Jessica talks about the diagnostic piece, I think, you started with this data piece, like when you reacted to comp and benefits, to say that person needs to become the data person. There's analytical skills that goes with that. There's, to Jessica's point, regardless of the specialty, a diagnostic piece. And then it kind of like all, kind of like sums up with the communication of what you did. It's all kind of like generalist skills. I think it's super interesting. I'll leave you with this. I'll get your quick reaction to this and we'll get out of here. I've told people like over the last 2 to 3 years, left and right, that, if you're looking for a good HR manager, a great place to look is the recruiting function. Because those folks, for the most part, have been selling, et cetera, et cetera. And generally, if they've got an interest in the HR world, they can figure out the employee relations side and kind of the generalist side. I'm taking a half step back on that now, because I don't know that I still feel that way in a fully functioning like economy. But in shorter staffs, I don't know that people can train recruiters to be generalists. I don't know that they'll have the time, as opposed to taking somebody that's already an ER person and kind of a generalist already. Does that make sense, Jessica? You've got a thoughtful look on your face, but I really feel like a good recruiter can be a great HR pro. I know for a fact that a great HR pro cannot always be a great recruiter.
I think that's right. I mean, they have to want it is one thing, because one of the things I feel like I hear all the time from recruiters is like they feel helpless at times because they don't have control over retention issues, and the retention issues and what is happening in a team or with a leader or a function, has so much impact on this job that they're trying to fill, or the frequency of a role that they're trying to fill. And so if they are willing to embrace like looking into in the diagnostics on the retention side and kind of flexing there, then I think that there is like a ton of potential. But I think the hardest thing also is like getting out of this like churn of I got a number of recs and I manage on a micro level. I get wins on a micro level, and like that change to like wins on a macro level is really hard, I think. But if they want it,
Tim, anything to get us out of here? I'll wrap us up after you comment.
Yeah, no, I agree, Katie, with you. I've always, we tend to like lean towards our talent pro, friends and peers out there, because we know that how difficult it is to recruit, and we think we can teach an HR generalist. But I agree with you. I don't know if we have the time right now or the capacity for a lot of people to teach a talent pro that. So I think you might potentially, if you're not going to hire a lot, more than likely recruiters are going to be impacted more, and you might have to take one of those HR, specialists that you have and teach them the rest of it.
Yeah, and a lot of that comes down to their willingness and capability to do it. No big deal. I wrote a book called The 9 Faces of HR. And Jessica appears on the cover, by the way. And if you're in the transactional side of that chart, you probably aren't going to want to do everything that is going to be required on a staff. All right, good stuff. So what did we learn today? We learned that a good HR generalist can come from a lot of different areas. It's probably more about mindset. I think that's right. It's about the ability to do diagnostic stuff, analyze data, and be a great communicator. You know it when you see it. It probably doesn't come from a single functional area. The other thing we learned, just as importantly, is that Jessica Lee has her eyes on the $250 Chromebook. She's thinking long and hard about that spiff from the folks at Salesforce. All right, that's it for this episode of HR Famous. I'm Chris Dunn. She's Jessica Lee. And of course, he is Tim Sackett. Until the next time, we are out.